I had originally planned on something else today, but decided to do a talking points instead. And the title of this one is Why Do We Collect Comics? And that's the question. Why do we collect comics? They weren't. And while I'm going through this, I'm going to be showing you comics. I have a nice big stack of them, so hopefully I won't run out. So why do we collect comics? They weren't originally intended to be collected. In fact, they were simply a means to convey a series of short stories featuring the same character, very much like the funny page strips in newspapers. The comics of the Platinum Age were mostly reprints of those same strips. And they were generally published monthly, quarterly, bi-monthly, or in many cases, 8 times a year. This qualified them as magazines or periodicals, which gave them a special status when mailing them for subscriptions through the Postal Service. Now, most of the comics in the early days were short stories, single stories. They didn't have long, ongoing story arcs. In fact, that's the way it was. My heater came on. I wanted to turn it off. It's not that cold. That's the way it was up until the mid-60s. Even the earliest issues of Fantastic Four, The Incredible Hulk, and Amazing Spider-Man didn't have continued stories. The first real story arc that I could find any reference to was created by Steve Ditko and ran from Strange Tales number 130 through Strange Tales 146 in one of his Doctor Strange stories. That was right around 1965. Now, it wasn't really very long before nearly every comic ended in a cliffhanger. This is until we have what we have now, which is there's autograph, which was the giant mega crossover events that feature pretty much every title of every comic in a huge convoluted story arc that creates a few miniseries comics along the way just to make it more difficult to get every little nuance of the story. Of course, that didn't happen for another 20 years. DC kind of experimented with that kind of thing starting in 1963 with their annual Justice League of America, Justice Society of America crossover. But, and that wasn't a new idea. The Earth 2 heroes appearing, that really wasn't new. The first reference to the Earth 2 was in actually Earth 2 was established in December 1962 or 1960 in the pages of Flash number 123, and that's where he meets Jay Garrick and finds out that Jay Garrick was real and came from a place called Earth 2. Now, wasn't until Marvel introduced Secret Wars in 1984 and DC followed that up the very next year with Crisis on Infinite Earths that we see the mega crossover events that we have all come to love and hate. Yep, we love them and we hate them at the same time. So again, I'm going to ask the question, why do we collect comics? Well, for some of it, it's money. Pure and simple, some of us collect comics for speculation in the hopes that they will bring us a better return on our investments than the more traditional stocks and bonds and savings accounts and stuff like that. A lot of those people are disappointed. Some of them aren't. If you're in it for a long haul, you might actually see a return on your investment. Some of us collect for nostalgia reasons. We read the comics as a child, young boy, young girl, and we want to revisit that simpler time of our life when we didn't have any responsibility. Still others collect them because they have this burning need to accumulate things. That's probably where I fit in. The reasons to collect comics is as vast and as different as the comics themselves. Rescue Rangers #1. That's got to be worth a fortune, right? No. You'd think, but no. Is there a right way to collect? That's a good question. Is there a right way to collect? Do you have to have your comics slabbed to be a collector? Do they need to be in bags and boards? Or in Mylar? Should you only collect key issues as they are the most valuable? Or should you just try to get the first issues, the #1s? Or maybe just complete runs or sets? What about if you only like a certain artist? Is it okay to collect that way? The simple answer is no. No, there is no right way to collect. There's no right way to store comics either. There's a better way to store them to make them last longer, to keep them in nice condition. But how you store your comics should be based on what you want to spend on them. If your ideal way to store comics is in manila folders, and that's what you can afford, then by all means do so. There are file copies of comics that were stored that way that are some of the best known examples of pre-code horror. Polybags and backing boards are a very popular way to store comics, along with the specially made boxes designed for them. Some people like to have their comics graded and slabbed. That's okay too. Some people only handle their comics with cotton gloves on. I prefer to just make sure my hands are clean and dry. Every collector is different, and every collection is different. So what's the right way to collect? The right way to collect is what's right for you. Collect what you like. Collect what you enjoy. Or what you want to speculate on. In the end, the only person that can tell you if you're collecting the right thing is you. No one else's opinion of your collection is important. No one else's opinion of what you have makes any difference. Collecting should not be about peer pressure. You should not be forced to collect X-Men when you enjoy reading Archie comics or Donald Duck comics. Or Superman comics in my case. A true comic collector is going to be able to appreciate your collection no matter what it is. And who knows, they just might find your enthusiasm for that complete run of G.I. Joe comics compelling enough that maybe they should give it a try. So why do we collect comics? Well, in the end, it's real simple. It's because they're comics. I still have about 30 more comics. You want me to go through them, or you want me to just stop here? You know what? I'm just going to keep going. And I'll expand on a few things, maybe. When I was buying Caravan Kid, which is by Joji Manabe, and I really enjoyed the series, and I have most of it still. There's a few issues that I had to get rid of because they were so water damaged I couldn't read them. Most of them survived in good shape though. But when I was buying them, everybody was kind of, yeah, you don't want that. That's crap. Yeah, well, it might be crap, but I enjoyed it. I liked reading it. It was fun. Every month I'd get my little Caravan Kid Joji Manabe fix, and it was great. Here's a comic that I know somebody's going to appreciate. Captain Stern. It's by Bernie Wrightson. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't before. These next few are actually adult comics, but the covers are okay. Then the artwork was by Wally Wood, and that's why it's in my collection. I really like Wally Wood's art. Yeah, we'll show you the next issue.